Well, I think one of the biggest challenges is people tend to want you to like be nice, right? They don't want you to point out the warts that exist in the community, right? Racial profiling is a perfect example. When we first started working on the issue of racial profiling, the police kept saying to us, well, the police would be much more willing to come to these meetings if you didn't call it racial profiling. You should call it like bias-based policing, or and so so having to be real clear. Well, no, we're calling it racial profiling because that's how it is impacting our community. And if the police are uncomfortable with that, then that's the police problem. It's not a community problem, right? And so really being able to confront the powers that be and hold your ground has been the biggest challenge. Because clearly when you're working with low-income people and people of color, people try to intimidate us into being nice and just playing nice, and let's just not point out, the elephant in the room. And so being able to teach people that it is okay to stand your ground and be respectful at the same time, but don't let the powers that be intimidate you into either asking for less than you want, or minimizing the problem to the point where it doesn't appear to be a problem, right? And so I think that's been one of the biggest challenges. Mm-hmm. Maybe it's my practice from working in the legislative body when I was in a minority party the whole time I was there. And one of the things that I promised myself in my first term was that I was going to find something in common with everybody. And that was a little challenging with some of my legislative colleagues, but I could always find something that we had in common. Even the most right-wing conservative legislator, I could find we had music in common, or we had military service in common, or we had large families in common. You could always find something in common with people, and I think if you remember that you're actually dealing with humans, and it's the humanity that you're trying to tap into, that ultimately you can have the hard conversation, and you can talk about the tough stuff, but you have to actually be able to see people as humans, right? You can't see them as the enemy or they're out to get me, because I think most of our societal problems are based on ignorance. Not based on people's genuinely just wanting to hurt other people, but it's really based on ignorance. And people don't know what they don't know. And so any opportunity you have to really help people educate themselves and learn more about communities that they're not familiar with, the better we all are. I want to tell you this great story. So my very first day in the legislative body, all the pomps and circumstances over, and I'm up in the legislative lounge, which only legislators can go in. And so I go up to the lounge looking for a snack, and I've got my head in the refrigerator. And I hear this person behind me going, "What are you doing in here? You can't be in here. This is just for legislators." And so for about 5 seconds, I'm like, well, am I going to be the good Joann Bowman, or am I going to be the mean Joann Bowman, right? And then I turned around and put the biggest smile on my face and said, "Hi, I'm Representative Bowman. Who are you?" And the guy started sputtering, and he's turning purple. And then finally he says, "Oh, but you look so young." Now, no one I've ever told this story to thought that the reason he challenged me was because I was young, right? But what's interesting about that story is this gentleman became my biggest ally in the legislative session because he was able to walk away from that encounter with his dignity, right? And so it just so happened we served on several committees together that dealt with criminal justice. And so throughout my legislative career, I didn't have to be in the room when he would say, if Representative Bowman was here, she would say that this would have a negative impact on kids of color if we passed this legislation. If Joann Bowman was here, she would say that there's overrepresentation of kids of color in our criminal justice system. He became one of my biggest allies, right? And so that was one of those kind of life lessons, right, that I think my mom would have been proud that I learned, which is I could have made an enemy that day for life, or I could have made a friend for life. And how wonderful that I made a friend for life that day that became a strong advocate for the things that I cared about during my legislative term.